Weeks turned into months after the wedding, and life began to settle into a new rhythm for both families. Emily and Daniel started their married life together, building a home filled with laughter, compromise, and mutual respect. They often spoke about how the wedding had been more than just a celebration of their love. It had also marked a turning point in the relationship between their parents. While the Carters still had much to learn, their initial hostility had softened, replaced by cautious curiosity and occasional moments of genuine warmth. For Richard and Patricia, the days following their visit to Chief Obina's house were transformative. At first, they struggled to reconcile their old beliefs with the new perspectives they'd gained. Richard, who had always prided himself on being self-made and successful, found it difficult to admit that his definition of success might have been incomplete. Patricia, too, grappled with guilt over her earlier behavior, replaying her snide remarks in her mind and cringing at how small-minded she had seemed. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, Patricia finally broke the silence. "Do you think we were wrong? About everything?" she asked hesitantly, staring at the fireplace without meeting Richard's eyes. Richard sighed deeply, setting aside the book he'd been pretending to read. "I don't know if we were entirely wrong," he admitted slowly, "but I do know we were blind to a lot of things. That man, Chief Obina, he didn't need to prove anything to us, but he did. And not because he wanted to show off, but because he wanted to teach us something." Their conversation continued late into the night, each word chipping away at years of ingrained biases. They realized that their mockery hadn't stemmed from malice so much as fear, the fear of losing control, of feeling out of place, of confronting a world that was changing faster than they could keep up with. But now, instead of resisting those changes, they decided to embrace them, even if it meant stepping outside their comfort zones. True to their promise, the Carters made an effort to connect with Daniel's family. They attended cultural events hosted by the Okoros, learning about Igbo traditions, music, and food. At first, they felt awkward and out of place, unsure of what to say or do. But Chief Obinmo welcomed them warmly, patiently answering their questions and guiding them through unfamiliar customs. Over time, Richard and Patricia began to appreciate the richness of a culture they had once dismissed, finding joy in its vibrancy and depth. The transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it perfect. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and lingering doubts, but with each passing month, the divide between the two families grew smaller. Emily noticed the change most clearly during holiday gatherings, when laughter echoed through the rooms and conversations flowed freely. Her mother, once quick to criticize, now complimented Daniel's cooking skills, while her father engaged Chief Obina in lively discussions about history and politics. As for Chief Obina, he never held a grudge against the Carters. If anything, he saw their journey toward understanding as proof of the power of patience and forgiveness. He often reminded everyone that no one is born knowing how to navigate differences. It's something learned through experience, humility, and an open heart. His wisdom became a guiding light for both families, helping them bridge gaps they once thought insurmountable. By the end of the year, Emily and Daniel celebrated their first anniversary surrounded by loved ones. As they stood together under twinkling lights, reflecting on the challenges and triumphs of the past 12 months, they couldn't help but feel grateful, not just for each other, but for the growth they'd witnessed in their families. The Carters, though still far from perfect, had taken significant steps toward becoming better versions of themselves, and Daniel's family, especially Chief Obina, had shown them that true strength lies not in dominance or superiority, but in kindness, generosity, and the willingness to embrace others. In the end, the story wasn't just about a wedding or a priceless gift. It was about redemption, understanding, and the beauty of coming together despite differences. For Emily, Daniel, and everyone involved, it was a reminder that love has the power to heal wounds, break down barriers, and create connections where none seemed possible. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. as one united family. In the days following the wedding, the Carters found themselves replaying the events of that day over and over in their minds. Richard couldn't shake the image of Chief Obinna standing tall and dignified as he presented the priceless necklace to Emily and Daniel. It wasn't just the value of the gift that haunted him. It was the quiet confidence with which Chief Obinna had carried himself, even in the face of their mockery. Patricia, too, wrestled with her thoughts, replaying every snide comment she'd made about his attire and culture. The memory of her own words now left a bitter taste in her mouth. At first, they tried to brush it off. "It's just a necklace," Richard muttered during breakfast one morning, flipping through the newspaper without really reading it. "Sure, it's valuable, but does it really change anything? He's still different." Patricia nodded absently, though her heart wasn't in it. Deep down, both of them knew better. They had underestimated Chief Obinna, and in doing so, they had exposed their own insecurities and prejudices. Their discomfort grew when news of the wedding spread beyond the immediate circle of guests. Friends and acquaintances who hadn't attended began calling and texting, eager to hear about the stunning gold necklace and Chief Obinna's heartfelt speech. One neighbor gushed, "I heard it was worth millions. What a remarkable man. He must come from such a distinguished family." Another remarked, "Your daughter married into quite the legacy, didn't she?" That gift alone speaks volumes about their heritage. Each compliment directed toward Chief Obinna felt like another blow to the Carters' pride. They had spent years building a reputation based on wealth and status, yet here was a man whose humility and generosity outshone everything they had worked for. For the first time, they began to question whether their idea of success, measured solely by material possessions and social standing, was truly meaningful. Determined to salvage some semblance of dignity, Richard decided to reach out to Chief Obinna. He composed a carefully worded email, thanking him for attending the wedding and expressing admiration for the cultural significance of the necklace. To his surprise, Chief Obinna responded promptly, inviting the Carters to visit him at his home to learn more about his background and traditions. Though hesitant, Richard and Patricia accepted, sensing an opportunity to mend fences, or at least save face. When they arrived at Chief Obinna's house, a modest but elegant property adorned with African art and artifacts, they were greeted warmly. Over tea and traditional snacks, he shared stories about his upbringing in Nigeria, explaining the importance of community, respect, and gratitude in Igbo culture. His words resonated deeply, challenging the Carters' narrow worldview. For the first time, they began to see Chief Obinna not as someone to mock or dismiss, but as a person rich in wisdom and values far greater than money could buy. As the visit came to an end, Chief Obinna offered a final thought. "True wealth is measured not by what we own, but by how we treat others. My hope is that our families can grow together, learning from each other and celebrating our differences." Richard and Patricia exchanged glances, their usual defensiveness replaced by a rare moment of humility. Though the road ahead would take time, the Carters left that day with a newfound appreciation for Chief Obinna and a determination to change. Their journey toward understanding wouldn't be easy, but it marked the beginning of something important, a chance to move past judgment and embrace the beauty of diversity. And as they drove away, the golden glow of the sunset seemed to mirror the faint spark of redemption flickering within them. The room was electric with awe as Chief Obinna carefully held up the gold necklace, its gemstones catching the light and scattering rainbows across the tent. Guests murmured in disbelief, their eyes wide with wonder. Some leaned forward in their seats, trying to get a closer look, while others whipped out their phones to capture the moment. The Carters, however, sat frozen at the head table, their smug expressions melting into shock. Richard's jaw hung slightly open, his earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of what he was witnessing. Patricia fidgeted nervously with her pearl necklace, her fingers trembling as she struggled to process the scene before her. "Is that real?" Someone whispered audibly from behind them, breaking the spell of silence that had fallen over the room. Another guest replied, "Of course it's real. Do you know how much something like that costs? It's priceless. Chief Obinna turned to Emily and Daniel, who stood side by side near the stage, holding hands tightly. With a warm smile, he draped the necklace gently around Emily's neck, his movements deliberate and respectful. "This is not just a gift for you," he said softly, addressing the couple. "It is a symbol of unity, of two families coming together, despite differences, to celebrate love. Wear it as a reminder that true wealth lies not in material things, but in the bonds we create and nurture." Emily's eyes glistened with tears as she touched the necklace lightly, feeling its weight against her chest. She hugged Chief Obinna tightly, overcome with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with gratitude. Daniel stepped forward next, embracing his father warmly. "You've given us more than a gift today," he said. "You've shown everyone here what it means to be truly generous." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the tent as guests rose to their feet. Many wiped away tears, moved by the gesture. Even some of Richard and Patricia's closest friends couldn't help but clap enthusiastically, glancing sideways at the couple with raised eyebrows. For once, the Carters were completely overshadowed, and they knew it. As Chief Obinna returned to his seat, still clutching the now empty wooden box, Richard leaned over to Patricia, his face flushed with embarrassment. "How did we not see this coming?" he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with frustration. "That man has been playing us since he got here." Patricia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stared blankly at the tablecloth, her mind racing. All their mocking comments about Chief Obinna's attire and supposed simplicity suddenly felt foolish. They had underestimated him, and it showed. Meanwhile, other guests began approaching Chief Obinna to congratulate him on such a meaningful gift. One elderly woman clasped his hand warmly, saying, "Your family must be incredibly proud of you. That necklace tells a story far richer than anything money can buy." Another man nodded in agreement, adding, "And your son is lucky to have a father like you. You've set an example for all of us tonight." Back at the head table, Richard tried to regain some semblance of composure. He cleared his throat loudly and signaled for a waiter to bring another glass of champagne, downing it quickly in hopes of calming his nerves. Patricia, sensing her husband's unease, attempted to salvage their dignity by striking up conversation with nearby guests. But every time she opened her mouth, she found herself faltering, unsure of what to say without sounding defensive or petty. As the evening wore on, the mood shifted entirely. What had started as a tense gathering marked by subtle jabs and condescension transformed into a celebration filled with genuine warmth and admiration. For Chief Obinna, for Emily and Daniel, and for the power of love to transcend cultural divides. People mingled freely, sharing stories and laughter, while the Carters remained largely isolated, their earlier arrogance having alienated them from the rest of the group. By the end of the night, even Richard and Patricia couldn't deny the impact of Chief Obinna's actions. His gift wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a lesson wrapped in gold and gemstones, one that forced them to confront their own biases and assumptions. As they watched Emily and Daniel dance under the twinkling string lights, surrounded by loved ones, they realized that perhaps they had misunderstood not only Chief Obinna, but also the true meaning of wealth, tradition, and humility. And though neither of them would admit it aloud, the seeds of change had already begun to take root. As the reception buzzed with energy, the air was filled with the clinking of glasses, laughter, and the soft hum of conversations. The newlyweds, Emily and Daniel, glowed with happiness as they made their way around the room, greeting guests and thanking them for coming. The Carters, however, remained seated at the head table, their expressions a mix of forced smiles and lingering disdain. Richard sipped his champagne, while Patricia adjusted her napkin unnecessarily, both clearly unimpressed by the festivities unfolding around them. It was time for speeches, and the microphone crackled to life as the MC called Richard to the stage. He stood confidently, straightening his tie before stepping up to address the crowd. His voice boomed across the tent, echoing off the walls as he began his toast. "Today marks not just the union of two people," he said, gesturing toward Emily and Daniel, "but also the blending of two families." He paused dramatically, letting his words sink in. "But let's be honest," he continued, his tone shifting slightly. "Marriage isn't just about love. It's about building something greater together. And today, Daniel has gained access to a legacy that spans generations." He glanced pointedly at Chief Obinna, who sat quietly, his hands resting on the wooden box. "Our family has worked hard to achieve what we have, and now, through this union, those opportunities are extended to him." The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others exchanged uneasy looks. Patricia nodded along approvingly, her lips curling into a tight smile. Emily, sitting beside Daniel, felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She leaned closer to her husband and whispered, "Don't listen to him. None of this matters." When Richard finally stepped down from the stage, there was polite applause, though it lacked genuine warmth. The MC then invited Chief Obinna to speak, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. As he rose to his feet, the room quieted, curiosity replacing the earlier tension. Clutching the wooden box in one hand, he walked slowly to the microphone, his movements deliberate and dignified. "Thank you," he began, his deep voice resonating warmly. "I am honored to stand here today, not only as Daniel's father, but as someone who believes deeply in the power of love and unity." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before continuing. "In my culture, marriage is more than a joining of two individuals. It is a celebration of two families coming together. We honor differences, embrace traditions, and find strength in our shared humanity." His words struck a chord with many in the audience, drawing nods of agreement and murmurs of admiration. But Richard and Patricia remained unmoved, their expressions skeptical. Chief Obinna noticed but chose not to dwell on it. Instead, he turned his attention to the wooden box, holding it up for everyone to see. "This gift," he explained, "is a symbol of our heritage and blessings. It carries the hopes and dreams of generations past, and today I offer it to Emily and Daniel as a reminder of where they come from and where they can go together." The crowd leaned forward eagerly, anticipation building. Richard smirked, leaning over to Patricia. "Here we go," he muttered under his breath. "Probably some dusty old relic." Patricia chuckled softly, though her amusement faded when Chief Obinna carefully opened the box. Inside lay a breathtaking gold necklace adorned with rare gemstones that sparkled brilliantly under the lights. Gasps rippled through the room as guests craned their necks to get a better look. Even Richard and Patricia froze, their smug grins vanishing as they stared at the priceless heirloom. Chief Obinna lifted the necklace gently, explaining its significance. "This piece has been passed down through my family for centuries. It represents unity, prosperity, and resilience. Today, it becomes part of your new journey." The room erupted into stunned applause, the sound echoing like thunder. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she accepted the gift, overcome with gratitude. Daniel clasped his father's hand tightly, pride shining in his gaze. Meanwhile, Richard and Patricia sat frozen, their faces pale with shock. For the first time that day, they were utterly speechless. Chief Obinna returned to his seat, his expression calm but triumphant. The Carter's earlier mockery now seemed hollow and petty, overshadowed by the grace and generosity he had displayed. Little did they know, this moment would mark the beginning of a profound change, not just in how they viewed Chief Obinna, but in how they saw themselves. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze rustling through the trees surrounding the estate. Guests arrived in droves, their laughter and chatter filling the air as they marveled at the beauty of the venue. White chairs were arranged neatly on the lush green lawn, forming perfect rows that led up to an archway adorned with cascading flowers. The scene was nothing short of magical, a dream come true for Emily, who had spent months envisioning this day. As the ceremony began, all eyes turned toward the aisle where Emily would soon appear. Her father, Richard, stood proudly near the altar, his chest puffed out as if to remind everyone present just how important his family was. Patricia sat in the front row, her posture rigid and her expression one of practiced elegance. She scanned the crowd with a critical eye, ensuring everything looked impeccable. But when Chief Obinna Okoro took his seat beside her, clutching the mysterious wooden box wrapped in ornate fabric, her lips pressed into a thin line. Chief Obinna's presence once again drew attention. His traditional Igbo attire stood out vividly against the sea of pastel dresses and dark suits. Some guests whispered admiringly about how regal he looked, while others couldn't help but stare in fascination. Richard, however, seemed determined not to let the moment pass without comment. Leaning over to Patricia, he muttered under his breath, "What is that? Did he bring a picnic basket?" Patricia stifled a laugh, though her amusement quickly turned into thinly veiled disdain. "Honestly, Richard," she whispered back, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "I suppose we should be grateful it's not some tribal drum or spear." Her words elicited quiet giggles from a few people seated around them, but many others shifted uncomfortably, sensing the cruelty behind the remark. Chief Obinna, meanwhile, remained unfazed, his calm demeanor unshaken by their mockery. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Soft music began to play, and the crowd rose to their feet as Emily emerged from the entrance, radiant in her flowing white gown. Her veil shimmered in the sunlight, and her bouquet of fresh roses swayed gently as she walked down the aisle. All eyes were on her, except for Chief Obinna's. While he admired Emily's beauty, his focus occasionally drifted to the Carters, observing their subtle smirks and knowing glances. Still, he kept his composure, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing him ruffled. When Emily reached Daniel, standing tall and handsome at the altar, the couple exchanged loving smiles before turning to face the officiant. As the ceremony unfolded, the tension between the two families simmered beneath the surface. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, and tears flowed freely among the guests. It was a celebration of love, yet the undercurrent of animosity between the Carters and Chief Obinna cast a shadow over the joyous occasion. After the couple sealed their vows with a kiss, applause erupted throughout the venue. Confetti rained down as Emily and Daniel made their way back down the aisle, hand in hand, officially husband and wife. The festivities moved to the reception area, where tables laden with food awaited the hungry guests. But even as champagne glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, the Carters couldn't resist making one last jab. During a lull in conversation, Richard leaned closer to Chief Obinna, gesturing toward the wooden box still resting on the table. "So, what exactly is inside that thing?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "A family heirloom, or maybe a lucky charm?" Patricia smirked beside him, clearly amused by her husband's audacity. Chief Obinna regarded them both with steady eyes, his smile enigmatic. "You'll find out soon enough," he replied simply, leaving Richard and Patricia more puzzled and irritated than ever. Whatever was inside that box, it clearly held significance, and the anticipation only added to the growing curiosity among the guests. Unbeknownst to the Carters, the contents of the box would not only redefine their understanding of wealth and tradition, but also force them to confront the narrow-mindedness they had displayed throughout the day. For now, though, they remained oblivious, secure in their belief that they were superior. Little did they know, the real lesson was about to unfold in a way none of them could have anticipated. As the afternoon sun bathed the estate in golden light, guests gathered under a grand white tent for the pre-wedding dinner. Crystal glasses clinked softly as waitstaff glided between tables, serving platters of gourmet food. The air smelled of roasted herbs and freshly baked bread, but the atmosphere was far from relaxed. Tension crackled like static electricity, lingering from earlier encounters between Richard and Patricia Carter and Chief Obinna Okoro. Richard, seated at the head table alongside his wife and daughter, seemed determined to assert dominance over the room. He leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of red wine, as he surveyed the crowd with an air of superiority. Patricia adjusted her pearl necklace, a gift from Richard on their anniversary, and exchanged pointed looks with her husband whenever Chief Obina's name came up in conversation. They weren't done mocking him yet. When it came time for speeches, Richard rose to his feet, clearing his throat loudly to command attention. All eyes turned to him as he began speaking, his voice booming across the tent. "Today is a special day," he started, nodding toward Emily and Daniel, who sat hand in hand at the bridal table. "We're celebrating not just love, but also the joining of two families." His words sounded rehearsed, almost robotic, but no one dared interrupt. He paused dramatically, taking a sip of wine before continuing. "Emily comes from a long line of hardworking individuals who've built this family's legacy brick by brick. And Daniel, well, let's just say he's certainly marrying into something extraordinary." A few polite chuckles rippled through the audience, though many shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Emily squeezed Daniel's hand tighter, her jaw tightening slightly. Patricia chimed in next, rising gracefully to stand beside her husband. She beamed at Emily, her smile warm but calculated. "Our darling Emily has accomplished so much at such a young age," she gushed, listing off Emily's academic achievements and career milestones. Then, without missing a beat, she added, "And while Daniel brings his own strengths to the table, we're thrilled that he now has access to the resources and opportunities our family can offer." The implication hung heavy in the air. Daniel wasn't good enough on his own. Gasps rippled quietly through the crowd, masked by forced applause. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to react. Chief Obina, seated a few chairs away, listened intently, his expression unreadable. His fingers drummed lightly against the wooden box resting on his lap, its contents still a mystery. Daniel felt the weight of every word, each one chipping away at the joy of the occasion. But instead of lashing out or showing anger, he leaned closer to Emily and whispered, "Let them say what they want. At the end of the day, I chose you because you're amazing, not because of what your parents think." Chief Obina finally spoke when the microphone was passed to him. Standing slowly, he exuded a quiet confidence that silenced the murmurs in the room. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," he began, his deep voice carrying a warmth that contrasted sharply with Richard's brash tone. "I am honored to be here today, not only as Daniel's father, but as a representative of our culture and values." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the room. "In my village, when two families unite, it is seen as a sacred bond. We celebrate differences rather than fear them, knowing that strength lies in diversity. Today, I see two people who have chosen to build a life together despite challenges. That takes courage and love." His words resonated deeply with some guests, drawing nods of agreement. Others, however, remained skeptical, including Richard and Patricia. When Chief Obina mentioned he had prepared a gift for the couple, whispers erupted around the tent. What could it possibly be? Someone muttered audibly. Richard smirked, leaning over to Patricia. "Probably some dusty old trinket," he whispered, earning a smug grin from his wife. Ignoring the whispers, Chief Obina held up the wooden box, its intricate carvings catching the light. "This gift represents more than material value," he said simply. "It carries history, blessings, and hopes for the future." Without another word, he placed the box on the table and returned to his seat, leaving everyone curious, and Richard and Patricia visibly unsettled. As dessert plates were cleared and the hum of conversation resumed, the Carters couldn't shake the feeling that Chief Obina was hiding something significant. Whatever was inside that box, it clearly meant a great deal to him. Little did they know, it would soon reveal a truth that would leave them stunned and force them to confront their own prejudices in ways they never expected. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, guests milled about the sprawling estate, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, but beneath the surface, tensions simmered like a pot on low heat. Chief Obinna Okoro moved gracefully among the crowd, greeting people with a warm smile and an easy charm that seemed to put everyone at ease, except for Richard and Patricia Carter. Richard stood near the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey as he observed Chief Obinna from across the room. He couldn't shake off his earlier irritation. To him, the vibrant dashiki wasn't just different, it was a blatant disregard for what he considered proper attire at such a formal occasion. Patricia joined him moments later, clutching a flute of sparkling water. Her lips curled into a tight smile as she leaned closer to whisper, "Honestly, did no one tell them this isn't some tribal festival?" Her comment drew stifled laughter from their close-knit circle of friends, who were all too eager to join in. One woman chimed in, "Well, I suppose it's better than showing up in, oh, I don't know, a loincloth." Another man chuckled, adding, "At least he didn't bring a goat or something." The group erupted into quiet giggles, careful not to let their voices carry too far. But their mockery wasn't as discreet as they thought. Emily overheard fragments of their conversation while mingling nearby. Her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment and anger. She glanced toward Daniel, who was deep in conversation with his father. Sensing her gaze, Daniel looked up and caught the distress in her eyes. Without needing words, he understood. Walking over to her, he took her hand gently and whispered, "Don't let them ruin today. My dad doesn't care about their opinions. And neither should we." But Emily couldn't ignore the growing divide between her family and Daniel's. As much as she loved her parents, their behavior chipped away at the joy she had hoped to feel on her wedding day. Meanwhile, Chief Obinna continued navigating the room with unwavering grace. When someone approached him with genuine curiosity about his outfit, he gladly explained its significance, the intricate patterns symbolizing unity, the colors representing strength and prosperity. Yet, when others made snide remarks within earshot, he simply smiled and nodded, choosing not to engage. The awkwardness reached its peak during the pre-wedding photo shoot. Guests gathered on the manicured lawn, posing for pictures against the backdrop of blooming flowers and rolling hills. Richard insisted on standing next to Chief Obinna for a group shot, perhaps out of politeness, or maybe to make another jab. As the photographer adjusted the camera, Richard casually remarked, "You know, you really do stand out in that ensemble. Makes me wonder if you're trying to start your own fashion line." Patricia burst into forced laughter, covering her mouth with her hand. A few others joined in nervously, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. Chief Obinna, however, met Richard's gaze steadily. With a calm that bordered on regal, he replied, "Thank you for noticing. Standing out is important. It reminds us that diversity adds beauty to life." His words hung in the air, silencing the chuckles around them. For a brief moment, Richard appeared taken aback, though he quickly masked it with a dismissive shrug. Later, as everyone settled into their seats for lunch, the tension lingered like an uninvited guest. The tables were adorned with pristine white linens and elegant centerpieces, yet the mood felt anything but celebratory. Emily sat between Daniel and her mother, her shoulders stiff with discomfort. On the other side of the table, Chief Obinna ate quietly, occasionally nodding at well-wishers who approached him with sincere compliments. Despite the Carters' attempts to ostracize him, he remained a beacon of dignity, a stark contrast to their thinly veiled hostility. Unbeknownst to anyone, Chief Obinna carried a small wooden box tucked under his arm throughout the day. Its presence went largely unnoticed, except by those closest to him. Daniel asked once, "What's in the box, Dad?" Chief Obinna merely smiled enigmatically and said, "Something special. You'll see soon enough." As dessert plates were cleared and speeches began, the Carters prepared themselves for what they assumed would be a predictable series of toasts. Little did they know, the true highlight of the day was yet to come, and it would leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about wealth, tradition, and the power of humility. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as guests began arriving at the grand estate nestled in the countryside. It was a day that had been months in the making, the wedding of Emily Carter, a bright-eyed young woman from a well-to-do white family, and Daniel Okoro, a man whose kindness and intelligence had won Emily's heart. For Emily, this was more than just a celebration of love. It was a chance to unite two worlds. But for her parents, Richard and Peterson Carter, it felt like an uneasy merging of cultures they didn't fully understand or appreciate. Richard stood near the entrance, his sharp suit fitting perfectly on his tall frame. He adjusted his tie as he watched people trickle in, exchanging polite greetings with those he deemed worthy of attention. Patricia, meanwhile, fluttered around the venue, ensuring every detail was flawless. From the flower arrangements to the seating chart, she wanted everything to reflect her family's status. Yet, despite her meticulous planning, there was one thing she couldn't control: Daniel's father, Chief Obinna Okoro. When Chief Obinna arrived, he immediately drew eyes, not because of any loud behavior, but because of his appearance. Dressed in traditional Igbo attire, he wore a dashiki richly embroidered with gold thread, paired with a matching cap adorned with beads. His presence was commanding yet warm, radiating dignity and pride in his heritage. As he stepped out of his car, some guests stopped mid-conversation to admire the striking colors of his outfit. Children pointed curiously, while others whispered compliments about how regal he looked. But Richard and Patricia weren't among them. Instead, their reactions were far less generous. Richard leaned over to Patricia, raising an eyebrow. "Well, isn't he colorful?" he said dryly, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Patricia smirked, nodding in agreement. "Yes, very creative," she replied, though her voice carried an unmistakable hint of mockery. Their words traveled quickly through the small group of friends standing nearby, prompting quiet giggles and judgmental glances. Chief Obinna, however, seemed unfazed by the whispers swirling around him. With a calm smile, he approached the Carters to introduce himself properly. Bowing slightly, he extended his hand to Richard and greeted him warmly. "Good morning, sir. I am Obinna Okoro, Daniel's father. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today." His accent was thick but melodic, adding a unique charm to his speech. Patricia forced a tight-lipped smile, offering only a perfunctory handshake before turning away to greet another guest. Richard, on the other hand, clasped Chief Obinna's hand briefly, but couldn't resist adding a jab. "Quite the ensemble you've got there," he remarked, gesturing vaguely toward the dashiki. "Very bold choice for such a formal event." Chief Obinna chuckled softly, not missing the underlying insult. "Thank you," he replied graciously, refusing to take offense. "In my culture, we believe clothing tells a story of where we come from and who we are. Today, I carry my ancestors with me." His response left Richard momentarily speechless, though not out of respect. Rather, he found himself annoyed by the older man's poise. How could someone remain so composed when clearly being mocked? Richard dismissed the thought, brushing past Chief Obinna without another word. As the morning progressed, Emily noticed the tension brewing between her parents and Daniel's father. She caught snippets of their snide remarks and saw the subtle sneers directed at Chief Obinna. Her heart sank. This wasn't how she imagined her special day unfolding. Daniel, too, sensed the unease. Pulling Emily aside, he reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, my father is stronger than their words. Let's focus on what today is really about, you and me." Still, the air was heavy with unspoken animosity. Little did anyone know, Chief Obinna had brought something with him, a gift meant to symbolize unity and respect. And by the end of the day, it would leave everyone stunned, forcing the Carters to reconsider everything they thought they knew about wealth, tradition, and humility.